Kazuya is a weak, miserable loser who manifested a girlfriend just from his clothes. After his mom passed on to Nirvana, his memory was sealed by a goddess, so the last thing he had from her was a mysterious magic cloth. After carrying that cloth everywhere like a clingy girlfriend, one day that's what it became, and there was nothing left to do but to start clapping. One day, Kazuya wakes up from a strange dream in class and mistakenly grabs his classmate's little plot, and she immediately punishes him for being an idiot. Later, he heads to the rooftop to think about the dream he had. He brings out a piece of cloth called obi from his bag, which he inherited from his mother, which he doesn't even remember a single thing about, and he wonders why it is appearing in his dream. He puts the cloth back into his bag, and as he prepares to leave, he sees a wig on the floor and becomes surprised because he didn't notice it earlier when he arrived. However, he doesn't give it much thought and walks past it. But the wig suddenly elongates and grabs him, shocking him. The wig then attempts to attack him, but suddenly, something stops the attack, and Kazuya wonders what the heck this is. A strange voice suddenly replies, telling him it's an amasogi, surprising him. Before he can think about this, the wig gives him an uppercut, throwing him off the building, but fortunately for him, the obi suddenly emerges from his bag and prevents him from hitting the ground. It turns into a hot chick, leaving him speechless, and he asks her who she is, but she gets angry and headbutts him, calling him an ingrate for not thanking her first before the interrogation. Another girl suddenly approaches him, and Kiria informs him that this is the host of the animated wig. The strange girl immediately launches an attack on Kazuya, but Kiria quickly saves him by elongating her sash and carrying him off harm's way. She then tells the villain that Kazuya is her slave, surprising Kazuya, who reasons that the yokai is spitting trash. Upon hearing this, Kiria threatens to feed him to the villain because he is referring to her as a yokai instead of a tsukumogami. But Kazuya considers them synonyms. She tells him to agree to be her slave if he wants her to save his ass, and he immediately accepts so he won't die. After getting him out of the way, Kiria and the villain begin an intense battle, with the villain unleashing several attacks with her weaponized hair. But Kiria skillfully dodges all before knocking her down with a jab from her sash. She tells the villain to get back to her senses, which is the only way her atonement can be mild. But the villain rises to her feet and unleashes even more attacks, and while Kiria manages to create a barrier with her sash to block them, two pins escape the barrier and hit Kazuya, mildly hurting him. Seeing this, Kiria gets angry and immediately attacks her, lifting her in the air. Then she launches an attack using the spiral weave, almost sickening her, but she pierces the evil wig on her head instead because Kazuya stops her. Later, the girl is freed and rests on Kazuya's legs since the evil wig has been removed from her. He asks Kiria why the girl attacked him, and she tells him that the wig became possessed by the girl's feelings for him, turning it into an amasogi, surprising him. Kiria further tells him that if he had been captured, he would have been brutally violated till its lust was appeased. Kiria soon disappears, and later on his bed that night, Kazuya thinks about the girl he met, wondering how she knows him so well, yet he doesn't seem to remember anything about her. A few moments later, he wakes up from a nightmare, only to find Kiria sleeping comfortably in his bed, shocking him. They soon get talking, and he realizes that she is the tsukumogami to his mother's obi. After this, she starts referring to him as a servant because she saved his life, even though she's meant to serve him instead. He soon goes to have dinner with his sister while leaving her in his room. He soon returns and sees the room scattered, but he doesn't see her, so he thinks she has left. He immediately gets undressed and heads to the bathroom to take a shower, but as he opens the door to the bath, he surprisingly sees an uncensored view of her plot in 4K, embarrassing her. She punishes him immediately for being a loser. However, they soon start to develop plot in the shower as Kazuya wipes her from the back. The next morning, Kiria interrupts Kazuya's sleep, and upon waking up, he realizes he has slept past the time for school. He wonders why his alarm didn't wake him, only to find out that stupid Kiria destroyed the alarm clock. Kazuya runs to class with all his strength, hoping to get to school before he is called for attendance. But he is already too late. After the class rep, Chisato, beats him like a thief for showing up late. He reasons that Kiria is the cause of this because while he was preparing to come to school, she also insisted on coming along. He thought it would damage his image before the pretty b****s in his class if Kiria called him servant before everyone. So he deceived her into entering a box, and he tied her up before running off to school. During lunch, his two ugly friends tell him about the rumored appearance of a ghost within the school, and they describe the wig that attacked Kazuya the previous day, making him realize others must have witnessed it too. One of the guys tells him to test his courage by taking a girl to the dark hallway to develop plot with her. And while he says this, the ugly disciplinarian appears behind them and gives them the beating of their lives. telling them they ought to be double-checking their reports that are due in the next class instead of engaging in foolish conversation. Kazuya instantly remembers that he has yet to fill his report, so he begs his friend to allow him to copy his, but Chisato grabs him and drags him away, telling him to come and start filling it immediately while she supervises him. In the library, while he fills the report, though still betting to copy her, she remembers when she used to go to his home to tutor him when he was much younger, since he has always been unintelligent. She then shyly asks him if she can come to his house again to teach him privately. He wants to agree but suddenly remembers that Kiria is at home, so he rejects the offer, making her a little sad. He soon finishes the report and stands up to return the book to the shelf while Chisato heads for the exit, but she finds it difficult to open the door. As Kazuya returns the book, he suddenly sees Kiria and screams in shock, making Chisato come to him quickly. However, Kiria hides while Chisato sees Mazuri is swollen, leaving her wondering what happened. He asks her why she is not yet gone, and she tells him that the door isn't opening, so he tries it too, but he can't open it too. He tries breaking the window open, but he also fails. Kiria appears, and on realizing that she didn't wear any panties, Kazuya quickly carries her and takes her to a corner to tell her she shouldn't have come, but she beats him up. She then tells him that if they experience any misfortune, then its Tsukumogami must be the cause, surprising him. She explains that Tsukumogami falls into two categories. The first is the Sugimomo, like herself, which arise from objects or tools after many years, and the Amasodi, like the one who attacked, which arise quickly from human emotions. She adds that Sugimomo has fully developed consciousness, while Amasodi are like newborn babies, which is why they misbehave. They soon return to where Chisato is, and Kiria explains the situation to her too. She then brings out a special pendant that is supposed to help them locate the Amasodi, but as they test it around the library, the supposed pendant reacts to everything, making them confused and embarrassing. Kiria thinks her product is fake. She resorts to trying to break the door too, by activating the spiral weave technique to force open the door. It breaks open, leading them to another place containing a myriad of books, and Kiria realizes that the whole study is the Amasodi. Suddenly the books start flying at them, but Kiria blocks them by forming a barrier, protecting herself and the other two weaklings. Several books then gather to form a gigantic book Autobot, which immediately begins to chase them as they run away. Trying to escape from the book Autobot, individual books start to attack them, but Kiria soon realizes that she's the only one being attacked, surprising her. The Autobot soon catches up with them and attacks again. As Kiria dodges the book attacks, a book gets past her and almost hits Chisato, but another set of books quickly forms a barrier and protects him. This surprises Kiria, and she immediately realizes that Chisato is the cause of the Amasodi. So as she continues blocking Autobot's attack, she tells Kazuya to think back on his conversation with Chisato since coming to the library, surprising him as he wonders what the heck that has to do with the problem they are facing. However, he recounts the events that happened and soon mentions when Chisato asked to come to his house, and he refused. Kiria tells him that's it, and then asks him to grant her desire. So Kazuya quickly grabs her and asks her if she would come over to his house sometime for some Netflix and chill, to which she excitedly agrees. The books collapse instantly, and they return to the library. Meanwhile, an ugly lady named Kukuyo is observing all that is happening from the top of a pole before flying off. The next day, Chisato visits Kazuya in his house, and she apologizes to Kiria for the problem yesterday. But Kiria tells her not to blame herself and explains that there is another bigger cause called a malison, which is responsible distortion in reality. She tells him that the library incident was caused by abnormally high-density malison, which is quite strange as it's rare that sufficient malison accumulates in one place to produce an Amasobi that powerful. Following this, the Kukuyo approach Shiro to ask if he is Kazuya, but he replies no, so the lady turns around to leave. However, Shiro, drawn to her huge shipment, wouldn't let the opportunity to grab them slide, so he quickly tells her he is his friend and can take her to him. A little diversion. Some years ago, Kazuya was in a coma after a terrible incident, and while in this state, the local Kukuri feared that he might awaken suddenly, which could make things worse. So she decided to seal away the excess spiritual energy along with his memories of the incident to stabilize him. However, this came at the cost of Kiria losing her power and turning back into a mere obi, since her owner was going to forget her. Continuing with the story, Kazuya gets to school the next day, and he is welcomed with a flying kick from Shiro, who blames him for all the troubles he faced the previous day. The previous day, Shiro took Kukuyo to a restaurant and asked her to order anything she wanted, bills on him, hoping that he might get laid. But little did the idiot know he was about to entertain a glutton who would order every damn meal on the menu. She finished the meal and left, leaving him to settle all the bills while also bagging a huge debt to his name. Shiro continues to blame Kazuya, but Kazuya tells him he doesn't even know the lady he is talking about, making him think he is lying. Meanwhile, the lady returns to the local god without Kazuya, and Kukuri insults her for being carried away with food. She tells her to go back to his school and bring her, but she shouldn't bring Kiryu along. She suddenly appears in Kazuya's class, and on seeing her, Shiro gets angry, demanding to grab her bouncy plot or she returns his money. She tells him to come, and while he runs toward her, he slips and falls after getting hit by Chisato's tool. Kukuyo tells Kazuya to come along, but Kiryu immediately transforms into her human form and replies that she isn't taking him anywhere. However, Kukuyo tells her they didn't ask for her opinion in this conversation,
Emotional damage.
making her angry, so she tries to attack, but Kazuya holds her down. Kiryu then suggests that they settle this with a bout of arm wrestling. If she wins, she will go along with them, and if otherwise, she will leave them the heck alone. They head to the rooftop and soon begin fighting, which involves fighting with just one arm, unlike the conventional way everyone knows. As they fight each other, displaying their skills, Kiryu grabs her thumb and smacks her on the ground, hence winning the bout. They'd all head to the shrine, with Chisato also following along, and on getting there the goddess, who should rather be a clown, appears in a Halloween mask, surprising the visitors who expected more. Kukuri and Kiryu get talking, and it seems there has been a long feud between them. Kiryu asks her why the seal is already broken, since it ought to last until Kazuya fully matured. Kukuri replies that the seal has not completely broken and has only weakened, but his memories tied to the truth remain sealed. However, Kiryu tells her to reapply the seal and soothe the malice and disruption in the city. But Kukuri says she can't do that yet and calls on Kazuya to become a malice and cleanser, shocking him. Kiryu objects immediately, but Kukuri doesn't mind her blabbing and tells Kazuya that the strange occurrences they have been experiencing lately only occur around him, because he is the beacon that attracts the Malicen. She adds that the threats caused by Malicen ought to be dealt with by their very cause, and while Kazuya opens his mouth, confused by what she is saying, Kiryu grabs him and tries to escape, but they are blocked by an invisible barrier. Kukuri tells them they ain't going anywhere until she receives a positive response from him, but Kiryu doesn't agree to her demands. Kukuyo suddenly grows wings, captures Chisato, and takes her away to remove her from the ensuing fight. Kukuri then wears another Halloween mask and immediately launches an attack by controlling water, being the water goddess, and Kiryu protects herself and Kazuya the barrier from her sash. However, Kukuri breaks through the barrier with another attack, surprising Kiryu, who immediately carries Kazuya and tries to escape by flying away with him, but gets stopped by the barrier again. Kiryu suspects that there must be something off about Kukuri, considering the sudden weakening of the seal and her refusal to show her face. She flies toward her and attacks with the sledgehammer weave, aiming for the mask on her face, but Kukuri blocks it with a water barrier before knocking her to the ground. Kukuri then tells Kiryu that it was smart of her to aim for the mask, as her power is currently tied to it. Kiryu gets back on her feet, and Kukuri prepares to unleash a greater attack with a full incantation. After casting a spell, she gathers a large body of water from the sky and pours it down upon them. Kiryu immediately shields Kazuya and herself with wall weave, shelter formation, her greatest defense technique, shocking Kukuri. However, this causes Kiryu to shrink in size, having used up a lot of her power. Kukuri ridicules her and tells her to reconsider continuing fighting since she is not in good shape to take another attack of water impact. But Kiryu refuses to give up, surprising Kazuya, who is already suggesting that they do. Kukuri unleashes another attack, and while Kiryu tries to shield them this time, it gets too overwhelming for her, because she is already weak, and the water breaks into the shield, causing them to drown immediately. Kazuya suddenly wakes up in Nirvana and sees a strange, goofy woman. He gets pissed and tries to leave, but she stops him and tells him to save Kiryu, surprising him because he is a weakling who doesn't even know how to save himself. He asks her how the heck he is going to do that, and she replies that he should get strong enough to the point that he can protect her instead of being protected by her. But this still doesn't make sense to the idiot. However, she gives him a strategy to use to save himself and Kiryu at the moment, saying he should use a special technique with Kiryu's true name, surprising him. He wonders what her true name is, and the strange woman tells him he knows it already. He wakes up to Kiryu swapping spit with him inside the water. They both rise from the water, and Kiryu attempts to fight again, but Kazuya stops her and tells her to return to her obi form. Kiriya initially refuses but soon changes to her original form when Kazuya tells her he will use her since she can't fight on her own anymore, and then uses her true name, Aya Sakura, to command her as her master, shocking Kukuri. Kukuri immediately attacks him, and he gets thrown off while he tries to block the incoming attack. However, he effectively blocks the next attack, and then Kukuri summons the floating serpent using the twisting water worn skill, terrifying him as he wonders what he will do now. He remembers the woman he saw in Nirvana, telling him what to do when Kukuri uses such a technique, and he immediately activates Shield Weave. She sends the floating serpent to attack him immediately, and he quickly activates the Waterst, which splits her attack into two. Then he launches into the sky and attacks using the Spiral Weave, which begins to spin. Kukuri tries to block it by creating an ice barrier, but Kazuya's attack bores through it, crushing it. However, Kukuri gets her hand on Kiriya and attempts to unalive her, so Kazuya immediately agrees to be a Malison cleanser. Kukuri frees her, and the sky becomes clear again, but as Kukuri stands before them, her ugly mask suddenly snaps and falls, immediately transforming the goddess into a middle schooler, shocking Kiriya and Kazuya and embarrassing her. Kiriya realizes that this was what she was trying to hide and gets pissed. Following this, they sit to talk, and when Kiriya realizes that Kukuri had used them, she gets very mad and harasses her. Upon returning home, Kazuya still can't believe that Kiriya is now an ugly shorty, and she tells him that she won't be like this for long, although it may take some time till she is fully restored. Later, as they develop shower plot, Kiriya remembers the technique Kazuya used earlier and reasons that this was the same Kanaka his mother always used. She immediately remembers a time she was with Kanaka licking a lolly.
What do you mean by that?
And Kanaka told her to take care of Kazuya if anything were to happen to her. A few days later, Kiriya goes to meet Kazuya in his room and tells him to get ready for training to prepare him for his new role as a Malison cleanser. But the loser tells her he will pass on this, pissing her off. She immediately tries to punish him by hitting him with her sash, but she discovers that she can no longer protect herself, which has happened since the time she fought Kukuri. She adds that she is now also weak, so she won't be able to protect Kazuya when an Amasodi appears again. She then says that this is why she has to train him till he is fit to be a Malison cleanser. The training begins and the weakest, lazy idiot gets exhausted as soon as he starts running, surprising his coach, who wonders if he can really take up this new role. Kiriya turns into an obi and instructs him to use the technique he used during the fight that day, but Kazuya doesn't remember how he did it anymore, disappointing Kiriya. She wonders how the heck he pulled the mastery he displayed fighting Kukuri, and he tells her he is as clueless as she is. They continue the more private training session in the bathroom, and while at it, Kiriya teaches him about the existence of Tsukumogami, saying they cannot exist without humans as the power to sustain their existence comes from their bond with their masters. She adds that she had not accepted him as her owner until their battle at the shrine, and after using up the power she had stored, she had to draw from the varied power sustaining her existence, leaving her like this, which is likely also the cause of Kukuri's reverse growth. Meanwhile, at the shrine, Kukuri and her subordinate meet some carpenters to help them fix the recent damage due to the fight, but the carpenters quickly run away upon hearing that the broken shrine is also broke and cannot afford to pay. Later that night, it starts to rain heavily, and while Kukuyo and Kukuri try to contain the situation, the holy shrine collapses, turning the goddess into a homeless orphan instantly. But Kukuyo tells her she has somewhere else in mind they can stay. The next day, they meet Kiriya and Kazuya training, even though it is more of Kiriya venting her anger on the idiot than training him, and Kukuri asks what this is for. Kiita replies that she is training his sense of Ronge, surprising Kukuri, who wonders why the guy who defeated her during the fight the previous day is training basics. Kiriya tells her it was all a fluke as Kazuya is damn weak, shocking Kukuri, who begins to think that she has made a grave mistake, making Kazuya a Malison cleanser. She tells Kukuyo they should start going in turns in the direction of their new home instead of the opposite way. Kirita later follows them to their new home and mocks her really hard upon seeing the playhouse the goddess now calls home. The next day, Kazuya heads to the office of the student council president, Tadataka, who tells him and Kiriya about tabletop RPGs, role-playing games played using pencil and paper rather than a computer. Kazuya asks what's up with it, and Tadataka tells him that the association has taken over the social studies research club's room, which is a problem. He also tells them he sent a representative to reprimand them, but he came running back talking about a monster, surprising Kazuya and Kiriya. As they walk across the hallway, heading for the club room, they meet Osamu, and Tadataka suddenly realizes that the social club room is missing. Kiria decides to check if it's due to an amasogi with her pendant, and it immediately reacts to it, shocking her. She tells them to leave quickly as they are not fit enough to deal with this at the moment. But they soon realize that the hallway has been blocked too. A very ugly dude named Nakajima suddenly appears and tells Tadataka that he must accept the Tabletop RPG Association as an official club and assign them a club room, giving him a form to sign. However, Tadataka disagrees immediately without thinking. Kazuya tries to tell him to pretend to agree so the effect of the amasogi can be nullified, but the student council president is a bull as he insists on not agreeing to Nakajima's demands. Nakajima immediately brings out his sketchbook and draws a minotaur in it, immediately summoning a minotaur, who starts to chase them. As they try to escape, they discover that their path is already blocked, so they quickly enter a science lab, but little did they realize that they just fell for Nakajima's trap. Kiria tells Kazuya they have to use their brain as this may be their way out of this. So Kazuya uses his brain cells for the very first time and realizes that Nakajima's sketchbook is the amasogi, such that anything drawn in it manifests into reality. This means there should be a way to erase the drawings. As Tadataka and Osamu try to use water to fight the Minotaur, Kazuya, still using all his brain cells, carries a fire extinguisher and sprays it on the Minotaur, immediately erasing its arm on the sketchbook, hence causing it to lose its arm in reality too. This gives them some time to run, but they come across another wall. Kazuya brings out his spray gun, again to smash the barrier, but he discovers there's another barrier. Nakajima appears with his Minotaur and tells them to give up. Kazuya notices another fire extinguisher beside the Minotaur and thinks of how to get his hands on it. However, Tadataka considers surrendering, blaming himself for putting the other three in trouble. But Kazuya, who believes he is the actual cause since the Malison are attracted to him, quickly discourages him from doing that. He signals to Kiria, and she turns into an obi, prepared to fight together with him. Kazuya immediately charges at the Minotaur while using the lessons he learned from the Rongi mastery training. He finally grabs the fire extinguisher with his sash before dealing the last blow with it, defeating the Minotaur. Nakajima becomes sober, like he didn't know what he was doing, and after analyzing his sketchbook, Kiria tells him that he has to be the one to destroy the amasogi to avoid suffering from the consequence of a Malison atonement. Nakajima tears the sketchbook, and while they think this is over, Nakajima pulls another stunt, hence summoning another Minotaur, shocking them. However, Osamu tells them not to worry as he still has the amasogi sketchbook with him. He already outsmarted Nakajima by swapping the sketchbook before giving it to him since he suspected he might play a trick on them. Osamu then draws a more powerful creature than a Minotaur, which burns off Nakajima's Minotaur in one attack. Checkmate. Following this, an ugly dude named Hiroshi summons the courage, despite his looks, to confess his feelings to Chisato on the rooftop. But she rejects him and tells him she likes someone else, making him mad. Later, while playing a computer game, he feels terrible that he was turned down by some ugly girl he thought he had a shot at. Then, Malison suddenly affects the game, and it asks him to make a wish. The next day, Kazuya gets to school, and he thinks he is a Siam game because all the students take themselves in twos, discussing how to develop plot. He is distracted by the scene, wondering what the heck is happening, and he suddenly bumps into a girl. He sees her panties, and she becomes embarrassed. So she quickly closes her legs and asks him if he saw anything. A tab suddenly pops up in front of him with 4 options to select his response from. But dude picks the wrong response, causing the girl to slap him. He later gets to his class and sees a similar tab open before everyone, making him wonder what is happening. Kiriha reveals that it is the handiwork of a gal game amasogi, a dating sim game, surprising him that she knows about such a sus game. She tells him the game amasogi must be somewhere within the school. So Kazuya starts to look around, and while at it, he suddenly sees Hiroshi playing love with Chisato, and he is shocked. He calls Chisato, but she tells him not to mention her name, surprising him. He asks Hiroshi what he has done to her, as she just turned his ugly ass down yesterday. But Hiroshi pretends not to know what he is talking about. Kazuya urges him to speak, but Chisato slaps him before leaving with Hiroshi, and as they go, Hiroshi tells him there is nothing he can do, as no one can beat him in pure heart. After he leaves, Kiriha immediately realizes that he is the host of the amasogi, since he knows the name of the game, shocking Kazuya. He goes to meet Osamu immediately to understand the principles of the game, and after Osamu explains it, he tells Kazuya that he has to raise her up to max out her affection by giving suitable responses in his conversation with her. So Kazuya goes to look for her, and on meeting her, He begins to use some re's he learned from Reddit, but everything comes crashing down when he gives the wrong response, turning her off. Kazuya returns defeated and wonders what he can do to save Chisato. Osamu suddenly reveals the NTR method, which includes saying or doing something very special that will max out her affection in one try. He adds that there should be some hint in their past, since they are both childhood friends. After school, while Hiroshi tries sealing the deal in the last stage of the game to sweep Chisato off her feet completely, Kazuya interrupts and brings out 2 dolls from his bag, which they both used to play when they were young, asking her to join him in playing again. Chisato immediately returns to her senses, and she runs to hug Kazuya, shocking Hiroshi, who thought he already had the girl. He runs off in embarrassment, and Kiriha and Osamu take Kazuya and Chisato to the infirmary to rest. A few moments later, Kiriha and Osamu decide to go and look for Hiroshi, while leaving Kazuya and Chisato behind to have some rest. However, after a while, Kazuya wakes up from his short sleep, only to find himself already held hostage, with no clothes on and Chisato sitting without her plot armor on top of him, ready to ride his horse.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
He struggles to free himself and convince her otherwise. Meanwhile, Kiriha and Osamu find Hiroshi, and he tells them he was running the game on a PC in the computer lab, shocking Osamu, who immediately realizes that it's the sus version of the game, which means Kazuya is in trouble. They quickly run to the computer lab to turn off the game, but by the time they return to the infirmary, Kazuya has already hit climax. Following this, Kiriha and Kazuya visit Kukuri in her beautiful home, and Kirita starts to bully her for not giving an accurate report concerning the level of malice in the area, as more Amasogi have appeared recently. She then asks her why her power has depleted so much to the point that she is now very weak and useless. She asks if it relates to why she chose Kazuya to be a malice and cleanser, but Kukuri refuses to answer it even though Kiriha threatens to force her to spill it out. Kukuri follows Kiriha and Kazuya home for a shower plot, and after she returns home, Kazuya has dinner with his family. He plans to take some food for Kiriha, as he usually does secretly, but he is shocked when he suddenly sees Kiriha eating at the same table with them. He is surprised that his family has always known about Kiriha when he thought they didn't. Kiriha asks for pudding, and Kazuya immediately remembers that he didn't give Kukuri some pudding while she left, so they both head to the playground, where she stays, only to find out the government has destroyed Kukuri's new abode. Kukuyo tells them that it was classified as a playground hazard and removed because a child was apparently injured on the playhouse slide. Kukuri feels terrible, wondering where she will sleep from now on, and Kazuya offers to accommodate them in his house. Later at his house, Kazuya wakes up and heads to the bathroom, only to accidentally grab Kukuyo's huge melons in his little hands. Kukuyo tells him to play with them a little more, but dude is so innocent that he can't touch a woman. Following this, they have a roundtable meeting where Kazuya's sister and father disagree with Kukuyo staying with them because of her intimidating melons, so she won't stain pure Kazuya. However, Kiriha threatens Kayuza's father by reciting a poem he doesn't want anyone to know about, and he immediately accepts her. Afterward, Kukuri turns the part of the house given to them into a shrine as soon as they pack there, and Kiriha tells her they need to go somewhere later in the day. After a while, when it's time to go, Kukuri refuses to follow her upon hearing that they are going to meet Taguri to borrow some loan for the shrine. However, she gets her to go, and on getting there, Taguri welcomes them by sucking them into her shrine. When Taguri learns that they came to take a loan, she suggests that they play a card game called Concentration, which involves them turning closed cards and getting anything written on the cards they pick as rewards, so Taguri will loan them any amount they get on their selected cards. But the game is also sus, and Taguri gets to do any naughty thing she sees on her card with them. As soon as Kiriha learns this, she blames Kukuri for not telling them about this beforehand, since it's not her first time playing the game with Taguri, and she replies that it's part of the loan deal to keep that information a secret. She attempts to leave, but Kukuri begs her to stay as they only to pick enough cards to make the money they need. However, as the game progresses, Taguri takes advantage of them and plays with the two girls. So after a while, Kiriha comes up with a strategy and asks Taguri to show her the toilet at the risk of being violated there. As soon as they leave, Kukuri readjusts the cards to confuse Taguri, but when she returns, she immediately discovers that the cards have been swapped. However, they deny touching the card, so Taguri tells them the fingerprints on the cards changed. She picks up a card expecting it to be different from her original arrangement, but shockingly realizes that the cards were not swapped. However, while they think they have outsmarted her, she suddenly shows them the rule of the game on the wall, which states they're not allowed to touch the card when it's not their turn, and if violated, the opponent takes all the remaining cards to herself, shocking Kukuri and Kiriha as they realize that Taguri is going to play with them all night. The following day, after a long night of workouts with Coach Taguri, they lie on the ground exhausted and feeling embarrassed. Some days later, Kazuya heads to school and is surprised to see girls flustering around Shiro. But he can't believe his eyes because he knows him to be an ugly, riskless simp whom no girl wants. As Osamu considers this, suspecting that there is more to it than meets the eye, Kiriha comes out of Kazuya's bag and declares with all confidence that this is an Amasodi incident. But Kazuya tells her she shouldn't be coming out of his bag like that as someone might see her. However, she grabs his baby-making factory and tells him to stop being a sissy. She then says that the weather forecast had stated that they were in for some denser malison over the next few days. She tells him that it's in times like this they need a malison cleanser and asks him to do something about it. However, he steps forward and accuses Shiro of using a tool to gain popularity among girls, shocking the other guys who are jealous of him. Shiro denies using any tool but mistakenly reveals that it was a cologne he used, and upon hearing this, all the boys start to chase him, demanding that he give them to use too. They continue to chase him like hungry zombies, and as he tries to escape from them, Kiriha returns to her obi form and knocks them off with her sash. Kazuya wonders why the guys are acting so strangely, and asks if this is also due to the Amasogi. Kiriha replies that the desire that spawned the Amasogi likely resonates too strongly with them. The zombies almost capture Shiro, but Kiriha grabs him, and they start to run away, trying to escape from the losers chasing from behind. They enter a classroom and shut the door, but the zombies soon start climbing from outside and breaking into the room, terrifying them. Kazuya immediately activates the sledgehammer weave on Kiriha's instruction, and they manage to clear the sky of the malison gathering over the school, calming the situation. Afterward, Shiro is tied as he is interrogated about how it happened. He explains that it all happened after he got rejected by a girl, even though he had drenched himself in a cologne that was supposed to make him attract girls, no matter how ugly he may be. He dropped the cologne on the table in disappointment and prepared to leave, but he suddenly heard the cologne talk to him, asking him to try using it once more. He heeded to the voice, and the rest was history. Kazuya then tells him he will have to destroy the Amasogi by himself, so he won't suffer from malice and atonement. Shiro grabs the bottle and hits it on the ground, but it bounces back up, and its contents spills on Kazuya, causing all kinds of women, both young and old, ugly and not ugly, to start to chase him immediately. He manages to escape, and on getting home, he walks past his sister and heads over to the bathroom straight away, not knowing that his sister has been affected too. As he takes his bath, thinking about how he needs to take the cologne back to school the next day so Shiro can destroy it, his sister enters the bathroom and joins him in the tub. Kukuyo also appears with her cargo and joins him until all the girls in the house join in for a harem plot. They play with him until he climaxes 3 times. Then, they decide to play the rock, paper, scissors to select who goes first on riding his magnum, scaring him and leaving him with no choice to break the bottle before he is roughed up without mercy. Due to this, Shiro suffers a malice in atonement, releasing a very foul odor in class for an entire week, causing his classmates to avoid him like a plague. Afterward, the student council president calls Kazuya, Kiriha, and Osamu to his office to tell them about a new occurrence in the school. He tells them a strange girl usually appears to students, demanding something from them. Hearing this, Kazuya and Kiriha are disappointed they are being called for such a simple case. But Tadakata reveals that the scary thing about the story, which he is yet to mention, is that the supposed girl named Nago died 2 years ago. Kiriha immediately realizes that it's caused by an Amasogi. Osamu suggests that they start looking into it by asking people around, and they immediately get to work, each interviewing different students to find out what they know about the occurrence. They find out that Nago unalived herself by diving from the top of a building, but before then, she had joined a fan club because of a boy named Yuichi. Also, there is a girl named Nanako, a student in the newspaper club who has been digging into the incident. They later gather to agree on what to do with the newly found information, and while they discuss it among themselves, they suddenly see Nanako from afar, trying to interview someone about the same incident, so they go to meet her. As they try asking her some questions, the lady she was speaking to earlier suddenly falls to the ground in fear as she sees Nago's ghost, so they quickly draw closer to the scene. Nago asks her about some letter. Kazuya suddenly attacks with his obi, and Nago blocks it before running away, surprising them and leaving them wondering what she means by the letter. Later in the infirmary, Kiriha explains that the Amasodi is a kamnioni, a dangerous foe born from regrets that linger in the hair of the deceased. Chisato says it must have its host somewhere, and Kiria replies that the host would be a living human whose wishes resonate with the deceased's regrets. They then ask Kosakobe to say everything she knows about the situation, and she begins to narrate, saying, "It was shortly after they got into the school, and all the girls started to crush on Yuichi because he was charming. She and her friends agreed to share him, but Yuichi soon took a liking in Nago, making the others jealous, who then began to bully her until she unalived herself. Following this, they discuss how to investigate the case, and an unattractive lady enters with a report on the Nago's younger sister, who seems to also be enrolled in the school. Tadataka is surprised, but the girl tells him that Nago's younger sister had used to a different name because her parents are divorced. Upon checking who it is, they are shocked to discover it is Nanako, the newspaper girl. They immediately set out to the location where Nago's Amasogi is currently tormenting a girl, demanding the letter, and as soon as they get there, Kazuya calls Nanako out. He asks why she is doing this, and she tells him that she wanted to know why her sister took her own life. This caused an Amasogi to influence Nago's hair, and it suddenly took her form. Kiriha calls her made-up story bullshit and says Nanako has a different reason for doing this. Kazuya asks about the letter then, and Nanako refers to the girl on her knees, who happened to be one of Nago's friends, saying she should know more about the Adio's memo. Moritsuki feels terrible as she narrates the story behind the letter. Nago had lashed out at them the day she died after being bullied by them, and she told them she was going to confess her feelings to Yuichi, but instead headed to the rooftop where she jumped off the building. Moritsuki got scared upon seeing the Adio's memo that day, thinking that Nago must have blamed her and her friends for her death, so she just decided to keep the letter without reading what was in it. She goes to bring the letter, and as Nanako reads it, she discovers that her sister has developed a growth on her chest due to her dark feelings. The Amasogi had told Nago it was there to help her fulfill her wish, after which it was going to disappear, so Nago, thinking the wish she had to meet was confessing her love for Yuichi. But she soon realized that what the Amasogi wanted was for her to isekai her younger sister, who was believed to be better than her in everything, and would take everything she has from her. So to protect her sister, Nago decided to jump off the building. Realizing that her sister died because of her Nanako, she feels terrible, wishing she were dead instead. Kiriha immediately discovers that this was the reason Nago's Amasogi was looking for the letter, so that Nanako can desire to die. Suddenly, the Amasogi becomes more powerful and develops the same growth that was on Nago's chest. It then attempts to attack Nanako, but Kazuya blocks it, saving her. The Amasogi launches more attacks and Kazuya manages to block a few before being knocked off. It grows even bigger, looking more horrible, and Kazuya launches a sledgehammer attack, but it deflects it. Kiriha informs Kazuya that he is too slow when switching between attacks and tells him to improve that. So Kazuya immediately unleashes several blows at insane speed and soon gets an opening. So he quickly activates Spiral Weave and bores through the Amasogi, isekaiing it instantly. Nanako continues to feel sorry, but Kiriha walks up to her to deliver a short TED talk, telling her Nago didn't write that to make her feel bad, but instead proved that her love for her was strong. She then admonishes her to stop wishing her own death, lest her sister's sacrifice be in vain. In a different town, Tsunao and her Tsukumogami seek permission from their god to go and cleanse Malison in the next town, Kamioka, and he grants it after testing that they are strong enough. The next day, while at school, Kazuya suddenly receives a punch on his face, knocking him to the ground as he wonders who he offended again. Tsunao appears and continues hitting Kazuya, pissing Kiriha off, who suddenly appears and blocks her kick. Kiriha asks what the heck she wants, but Tsunao starts attacking her too, and after a series of exchanges, Tsunao smashes Kiriha on the ground, defeating her. Just as Kiriha wishes she could still project herself, her sash suddenly launches out towards Tsunao, but her Tsukumomo named Kotetsu intercepts and cuts it off, annoying Tsunao, who had initially told her to stay out of this. She orders her to change to her original form as a sword, shocking Kiriha and Kazuya to discover Kotetsu is a sword Tsukumomo. Kiriha then asks why she is attacking her owner, and Tsunao replies that she is also a Malison cleanser, and has come to test Kazuya's skill. She then tells him it's ridiculous how such a weak dude, who can't even defend himself, is a Malison cleanser, and she says he is not fit to replace Kanaka. But bro's brain is too faulty. He doesn't even remember that Kanaka was his mother. Kiriha wonders how the heck she knows Kanaka, and after this, Tsunao tells them she is reporting them to the local god in the area. On getting to Kukuri's shrine, Tsunao tells her Kazuya and his Tsukumogami are too weak for their role and are not a perfect replacement for Kanaka, the former Malison cleanser. Several years ago, Tsunao's brother had just been isekai'd by an Amasogi, which made her very terrible. So she went to meet the local god of her region to ask for permission to get its Tsukumogami to use to avenge her brother. But the local god told her she was too young and should go and play with other kids. However, she didn't listen and went to obtain Kotetsu, which initially belonged to her brother by force. She then went after the beast that took her brother from her. But it was too late as Kanaka already isekai'd before she got there, making her more pissed. So she told Kanaka that she would be the target of her vendetta from then onward, since her anger can't just go to waste like that. Following that, she challenged Kanaka to many duels and maintained an undefeated losing streak, which made her train harder to become stronger. However, she later returned only to discover that Kanaka was no more and had been replaced by some weak loser who didn't fit. She then tells Kukuri she would like to replace them instead, since it's always been known that the Malison cleanser in a region has to be the strongest in that region. So she suggests they settle this with a duel, and whoever wins takes the role, shocking Kazuya and Kiriya. Following this, Kazuya returns home feeling terrible because he has not fulfilled his duty as he should, which has led to people suffering malice and atonement because of him. Dude receives the best comfort in his pathetic life when Kiriya hugs him in her creation state and gets the motivation to fight again. Kiriya also returns to her full size when she gets in a sus position with him, and then begin to think about how to win the duel with Sunao. Kazuya's sister and Kuruki suddenly enter and find Kiriya riding him, irritating them. Afterward, Kazuya and Kiriya start to train in preparation for the duel, and Sunao also spars with Honoka, the local god of her region, to prepare for the fight. She is quite confident Kazuya is a piece of cake for her, and while she expresses this, Kotetsu tells her she shouldn't be too cocky, as even though Kazuya may look weak, he must have passed the test to become a Malison cleanser, so it won't be wise to underestimate him. However, Sunao dismisses her words and tells her never to make silly suggestions to her again. She should just keep being the tool that she is and not try to act smart. Later, while Kazuya and Kiriya take their bath together, she explains how the duel will be. The two fighters will be wrapped in a water barrier connected to two separate water dolls, so that when damage is made, it doesn't affect them, and instead transfers the impact to the dolls. The duel will continue until one of the dolls breaks and can no longer receive damage. However, Kiriya states that these barriers only protect the fighters and not their Tsukumogami, which means she and Kotetsu can be damaged. She then says that he can use two projections different from her real self, which though are relatively weaker, so he has to use his brain when deciding which one to use at each point during the fight. She adds that he shouldn't hesitate to use her if the need arises, making him speechless. She wonders what he is thinking, and he later tells her that she is as important to him as the fight, so he doesn't want her to be hurt. He then promises to do his best to protect her and also win the battle, making her face suffer a sunburn immediately. Later that night, Kazuya dreams about Kanaka, who shows him how much of a dirty loser who has no self-control with women he is, and as she leaves, she reveals herself as a previous Malison cleanser. However, he finds it difficult to connect the fact that she is his mother, and she tells him he can't because that part of his memory is currently sealed away. She adds that he will remember with time. Until then, she will continue waiting. He suddenly wakes up from the dream, terrified, and later in the morning, he and Kiriya prepare to fight Sunao and Kotetsu. They form a pact with the water dolls, and after telling themselves some self-motivational jargon, the fight commences. Kazuya charges at her and activates a dummy weave immediately to create a wall of defense, but Sunao destroys it with a strike from her sword. He forms the barrier again, and as Sunao attacks it again, Kazuya quickly attacks with his Obi's projection, causing a crack in Sunao's water doll immediately. The fight continues, and after a series of attacks on Kazuya, Sunao realizes that they have figured out her Ronge of attack. Kazuya goes attack mode by making a tangle ball, surprising Sunao, who has not seen such a technique before. As she prepares to defend it, Kotetsu warns her to back off, but Sunao disregards her advice. Kazuya unleashes an attack, and while Sunao plans to block it, it suddenly turns into a sledgehammer and knocks her to the ground. Kazuya launches another attack using Spiral Weave, but Sunao shockingly stops the attack and counterattacks with Empty Strike, impacting Kazuya's water doll. Kiriya tells Kazuya to leave her strike Ronge immediately, and as he tries to run, Sunao fires multiple attacks, which overwhelms him. He soon runs into the bush to save his ass and immediately starts attacking from there with the archery weave, but Sunao manages to dodge them. Sunao launches another attack, and Kazuya blocks it with a real Obi, hurting Kiriya a little. Kiriya retracts one of the projections immediately to conserve spiritual energy, and when Sunao fires another attack, Kazuya just jumps away from harm's way. surprising Kiriya. However, Kazuya needs 2 projections to use this technique, which means he would have to use the real obli. But he fears that Kiriya might get hurt in the process. Sunao prepares another attack, which she believes should defeat Kazuya and Kiriya for good. And while Kazuya delays in blocking, Kiriya urges him to use it anyway. But he remembers his promise to protect her and immediately activates a new technique, the hand weave, watershed, which deflects Sunao's attack, shocking her. Kazuya launches another attack immediately, hitting her and causing more damage to her water doll. She starts to withdraw immediately to avoid being hit again, which could mean her defeat. As Kazuya attacks again with a projection, she cuts through it and follows it up with the empty strike move, causing damage to his water doll too. So both of them stay still at a distance, without attacking, as a wrong move of any of them can cause their defeat. They consider the best action to take, with Kazuya thinking he can't attack now, since it will only leave him open due to having only 2 projections left. And on the other hand, Sunao reasons that she can't use ranged attacks anymore since they will not get any close to her. Honoka, the local god who has been watching the fight with his avatar, says the battle is over because delaying much longer will only make Kiriya recover her spiritual energy, which would give Kazuya more advantage. Kiriya tells Kazuya that they have a chance of winning if they remain defensive, but he refuses, saying they can't truly win unless they'd face Sunao at her best, surprising Kiriya, who wonders what that has to do with their victory. And he replies that he wants to prove to her that Sugimomo are more than just tools, since Sunao is known for disrespecting Kotetsu and only sees her as a mere tool. Kazuya launches out immediately, surprising Sunao, who also immediately prepares to use her secret powerful strike called Wind Cutter. As Kazuya approaches her, he suddenly fuses with Kiriya, and they activate a phenomenon called Divine Possession, which involves of Sugimomo possessing its owner, giving him superhuman strength. Kazuya turns into reverse Naruto immediately and engages in a very intense battle with Sunao at an insane speed. After a while, he grabs her sword and releases spiritual energy that shatters the grip of the sword before unleashing his final move, Coiling Serpent, causing her water doll to break immediately. Kazuya is declared the winner, and Sunao leaves, feeling ashamed. Afterward, Kazuya suddenly collapses due to exhaustion from the fight. Meanwhile, upon returning to her clan, an ugly but not so ugly woman starts to rebuke Sunao for losing the duel and damaging Kotetsu in the process, being heir to the clan and successor to the clan's school of swordsmanship. She then tells her she can no longer inherit the house and the school, except she gets married to Kazuya, shocking her. Afterward, they resume back to school, and as they sit in class, the homeroom teacher carrying a chest of cargo appears and introduces a newly transferred student, Obina Kiriha. Will Kazuya ever regain his memories? If you enjoyed this, like this video and comment part 2 for the next part. Also, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. See you on the next one.